I trusted her with everything. My passwords, my bank account, my future. I woke up one morning and it was all gone. But the worst part, I saw it coming and I let it happen anyway. The silence woke me up. That's the first thing I remember. Not the sound of her leaving, not the door closing, just silence. Complete, suffocating silence. I reached across the bed and felt cold sheets where Alyssa should have been. My eyes weren't even fully open yet when I knew something was wrong. The air felt different, empty. I sat up and looked around our Quezon City condo. Her side of the closet was open, empty. The little lamp she'd bought at the night market, the one she said made her feel at home, was gone. Her phone charger wasn't plugged in by the bed. Her slippers weren't by the bathroom door. I stood up, my heart starting to hammer in my chest, and walked through every room like I was searching a crime scene, because that's what it was. She'd erased herself, completely, like she'd never been there at all. My phone was buzzing on the nightstand. 37 missed calls. I didn't recognize the number, but I knew it was bad. My hands were shaking when I unlocked the screen. 15 voicemails from my bank's fraud department. Fraud department. The words didn't make sense yet. I opened my banking app and waited for it to load. Those 3 seconds felt like hours. When the screen finally refreshed, I saw it. The joint account. The one we'd opened 6 months ago. The one with $47,000 in it. My retirement cushion. My safety net. My future. The balance read 0. Not 47,000. Not even 47 cents. 0. I refreshed it again. Same number. I called the bank. The automated voice confirmed it. All funds withdrawn. Transferred. Last night, while I was asleep, while she was lying next to me, I tried calling her. The line didn't even ring, just a cold, automated message. This number is no longer in service. I opened Facebook. Her profile was gone. Instagram, deleted. WhatsApp, blocked. I searched her name like a maniac, scrolling through every variation, every spelling, nothing. She'd vanished, but the empty account wasn't a ghost. It was proof. Proof that she'd been real. Proof that I'd been a fool. I need to go back. Back to when I still believed. Back to when her smile felt like sunlight and her voice felt like home. Because if I don't tell you how it started, you won't understand how I let it end the way it did. 8 months earlier, I landed in Manila with one suitcase, a laptop, and a heart I thought was too broken to ever feel anything again. My divorce back in Austin had been brutal. 23 years of marriage ended because I worked too much, cared too little, and stopped seeing the woman I'd promised to love forever. She said I'd become a ghost in my own life. Maybe she was right. I didn't fight her. I just signed the papers and booked a one-way ticket to the Philippines. I'd read about expats retiring here, living like kings on social security checks, finding peace in a place where nobody knew their name or their failures. That sounded perfect to me. I wasn't looking for love. I was looking to disappear. I checked into a mid-range hotel in Malate. Nothing fancy, just clean and quiet. The kind of place where you could sit by the pool with a beer and not think about anything. That's where I met her, Alyssa. She was working the front desk, and when I walked up to check in, she looked up at me and smiled. Not the practiced customer service smile, a real one, warm, genuine. Like she was actually happy to see me. She said, "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to Manila. Is this your first time here?" Her English was perfect, her voice soft and respectful. I said, "Yeah, first time, hoping to stay a while." She leaned forward a little, her eyes bright with curiosity, and said, "Oh, you're moving here? That's wonderful. Where are you from?" I told her Austin, Texas, and she lit up. She said, "I love Texas. I watch so many American movies, cowboys and barbecue, right?" I laughed. It was the first real laugh I'd had in months. We talked for 20 minutes. She asked where I wanted to eat, what I wanted to see, if I needed help with anything. She wasn't pushy. She wasn't flirting. She was just kind. When I walked away from that desk, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. I felt seen. I came back the next day just to talk to her. I told myself I needed directions, but that was a lie. I wanted to see her again. She remembered my name. She said, "Good morning, Jerome. Did you find a good restaurant last night?" I couldn't believe she remembered. We talked again, longer this time. She told me she was from Bulacan, that she sent most of her salary back to her family, that she dreamed of going to college someday but couldn't afford it. She didn't say it like she was looking for pity. She said it like it was just life. I admired that. A week later, I asked her to dinner. She hesitated, then smiled and said, "Okay, but somewhere simple. I don't want you to spend too much." That made me like her even more. We went to a local place, nothing fancy, and we talked for 3 hours. She asked about my life, my work, my marriage. I told her everything. She listened like every word mattered. When I dropped her off that night, she said, "Thank you, Jerome. I had a really nice time. You're a good man." I drove back to my hotel, feeling something I hadn't felt in years: hope. A month later, she started staying at my condo on weekends. I'd rented a place in Quezon City by then, a 2-bedroom with a view of the city. It wasn't much, but it was mine. She'd come over Friday nights after work, and we'd cook together, watch movies, talk until 2 in the morning. She never asked for anything, never hinted that she needed money or help. She just wanted to be with me, or at least that's what I thought. 3 months in, she moved in. I didn't even ask her to. She just started leaving more clothes, spending more nights, and one day I realized she lived there. It felt natural. Right. She'd wake up early and make me coffee before I started my consulting calls. She'd rub my shoulders when I was stressed. She'd curl up next to me on the couch and say, "I'm so happy here, Jerome. I never want to leave." I believed her. God, I believed her. 2 months after she moved in, everything changed. We were sitting on the couch one night, watching some Filipino drama she liked, when she went quiet. I looked over and saw tears running down her face. I said, "Hey, what's wrong?" She shook her head, wiping her eyes, and said, "Nothing. I'm sorry. I shouldn't bother you with my problems." I pulled her close and said, "Alyssa, talk to me. What's going on?" She took a shaky breath and said, "It's my uncle, Tito Bong. He's really sick. His kidneys are failing, and he needs surgery, but my family doesn't have the money. I've been trying to save, but it's not enough. I don't know what to do." She was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. I felt this surge of protectiveness, this need to fix it. I said, "How much does he need?" She pulled back, her eyes wide, and said, "No, Jerome, I can't ask you for that. That's not why I told you." I said, "I know, but I'm offering. How much?" She hesitated, then whispered, $3,000. "But Jerome, I can't take that from you." I said, "You're not taking it. I'm giving it. Let me help." She buried her face in my chest and cried so hard I thought she'd break. She said, "You're an angel. I don't deserve you." I transferred the money the next day. A week later, she showed me photos of Tito Bong in the hospital, recovering, smiling in his bed with her family around him. She said, "He's doing so much better, Jerome. You saved his life. My family is so grateful." I felt good. No, I felt great. I felt needed, useful, like I mattered. I told myself this is what love looks like: helping the person you care about, being there when they need you. But late that night, lying in bed while she slept next to me, a small voice in my head whispered something I didn't want to hear. Was that real? Or was that the test? I pushed the thought away. She loved me. I was sure of it. But the requests kept coming. A month later, she told me her younger brother Marlon needed help with tuition. She said, "He's so smart, Jerome. He wants to study engineering, but we can't afford it. If he doesn't enroll this semester, he'll lose his spot." I sent $1,500. Then her mom's house needed repairs. The roof was leaking. $2,000. Then Alyssa's phone broke. She said, "I'm so sorry to ask, but I need it for work. I can't afford a new one right now." I bought her an iPhone, $800. Every time, she cried. "Every time," she said. "I'll pay you back. I promise." Every time, I said, "Don't worry about it. I've got you." And I did. I had her, or she had me. I couldn't tell anymore. One night, I sat down and went through my bank statements. In 5 months, I'd sent or given her over $12,000. 12,000. I felt sick. I tried to rationalize it. Filipinos take care of their families. That's the culture. She wasn't using me. She was just in a tough spot. But the knot in my stomach wouldn't go away. I brought it up gently the next night. I said, "Hey, can we talk about money for a second?" Her whole body tensed. She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "I just want to make sure we're on the same page. I'm happy to help your family, but it's been a lot lately. I need to make sure I'm not overextending myself." Her eyes filled with tears. She said, "I knew it. I knew this would happen. You think I'm using you." I said, "No, that's not what I'm saying." She stood up, her voice breaking, and said, "I feel so ashamed, Jerome. I never wanted to be a burden. I never wanted you to feel like this. Maybe I should just go." I panicked. I said, "Alyssa, no, please don't go. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that." She sat back down, crying into her hands, and said, "I'll get a better job. I'll help more. I promise." I pulled her close and said, "It's okay. We're okay." That night, we had sex. It was intense, desperate, like she was trying to prove something. Afterward, she whispered, "I love you so much, Jerome. I don't know what I'd do without you." I whispered back, "I love you too." And just like that, the conversation was forgotten, or buried. I'm still not sure which. 3 months later, she brought up the joint account. We were having breakfast, and she said, "Jerome, I've been thinking, what if we opened a joint account together?" I looked up from my coffee and said, "A joint account? Why?" She smiled and said, "For our future, so I can help manage expenses while you focus on your work. I want to feel like we're building something together, like partners." I hesitated. Something about it felt wrong. I said, "I don't know, Alyssa. That's a big step." She reached across the table and took my hand. She said, "I know, but I want to feel like an equal, Jerome. Not like someone you're just taking care of. I want to contribute. I want you to trust me." Her eyes were so earnest, so full of hope. How could I say no? But I didn't say yes right away. I met my friend Cynthia for coffee the next day. She's a Canadian expat, been in the Philippines for 10 years, married to a local guy. She knows how things work here. I told her about Alyssa's idea, and her face immediately went cold. She said, "Jerome, don't do it." I said, "Why not?" She leaned forward and said, "Because you barely know her family. You don't know her full story. A joint account gives her access to everything. If things go south, you have no protection." I said, "But she's not like that. She's not trying to take advantage." Cynthia shook her head and said, "I'm sure she's lovely, but people do desperate things when money's involved. Just be careful." I thanked her and left. But that night, when Alyssa was sitting across from me, holding my hand, telling me how much she wanted to build a life together, Cynthia's words felt cruel, paranoid. Alyssa wasn't like that. She loved me. I could feel it. We went to the bank the next day. I deposited $47,000, my entire retirement cushion. The teller set up the account, handed us both cards, and congratulated us. Alyssa cried happy tears right there at the counter. She said, "Thank you, Jerome. You have no idea what this means to me. You're the best thing that ever happened to me." That night, she was more affectionate than she'd been in weeks. She cooked my favorite meal, gave me a massage, curled up in my lap and whispered, "I'm so lucky to have you." I felt like I'd made the right choice, like we were finally on solid ground. I was an idiot. The cracks started small, so small I almost didn't notice. Alyssa started coming home later. She'd say she was working overtime or meeting friends, and I'd believe her. Why wouldn't I? But then she started being on her phone more, constantly. I'd walk into the room and she'd flip it face down. I'd ask who she was texting and she'd say, "Just my cousin Randy. He's helping me look for a better job." I said, "That's great. When do I get to meet him?" She said, "Soon. He's really busy right now." I let it go, but the feeling in my gut wouldn't go away. One afternoon, I tried to check the joint account balance. The app kept glitching, error after error. I drove to the bank, walked up to the counter, and asked them to check it for me. The teller pulled it up and said, "Sir, it looks like there's a withdrawal limit set on this account." I said, "A what?" She said, "A daily withdrawal limit. $500 per day. It was set up 2 weeks ago." I said, "I didn't set that up." She looked at the screen and said, "It was set up by the co-account holder, Miss Alyssa." My blood went cold. I said, "Can you remove it?" She said, "You'll need to come in together to change any account settings." I thanked her and left. My hands were shaking. That night, I confronted her. I tried to keep my voice calm. I said, "Alyssa, I went to the bank today. They said you set a withdrawal limit on our account. Why didn't you tell me?" Her whole demeanor changed. She crossed her arms and said, "Because I was trying to protect us. You spend too much, Jerome. I was trying to make sure we don't blow through all our savings." I said, "That's my money, Alyssa. I should have been part of that decision." She stood up, her voice sharp, and said, "Our money, Jerome? You said we're partners, remember? Or does that only count when it's convenient for you?" I didn't know what to say. She grabbed her purse and said, "I'm going out. I need some air." I said, "Where are you going?" She said, "Out, with friends. Is that okay with you, or do I need your permission now?" She slammed the door on her way out. She didn't come home until 3 in the morning. I was lying in bed, wide awake, when I heard the door open. She tried to be quiet, but I could hear every step. She slipped into bed without saying a word. I could smell cologne. Men's cologne, not mine. I said, "Where were you?" She said, "I told you, out with friends." I said, "Until 3 a.m. She rolled over, her back to me, and said, "I'm tired, Jerome. Can we not do this right now?" I wanted to push. I wanted to demand answers, but I was scared. Scared of what I'd find if I kept digging, so I said nothing. I just lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, knowing something was very, very wrong. A week later, I did something I'm not proud of. I followed her. She told me she was meeting Randy to look at a job opportunity. She left around noon, and I waited 10 minutes before getting in my car and tailing her. I felt like a crazy person, but I had to know. She took a jeepney to SM North, and I watched from across the street as she walked up to the entrance. A guy was waiting for her, mid-20s, good-looking, wearing a tight black shirt and jeans. He smiled when he saw her. She smiled back, and then they kissed. Not a friendly kiss, a real kiss. Long, intimate, like they'd done it 1,000 times before. My chest felt like it was caving in. They walked into the mall, holding hands. I followed them inside, keeping my distance, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. They weren't looking at job listings. They were laughing, shopping, stopping at a restaurant. I watched them sit down, watched him reach across the table and take her hand, watched her lean in and whisper something that made him laugh. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I just walked over. I didn't plan it. I just moved. When I got to the table, they both looked up. Alyssa's face went completely blank. Not surprised, not guilty, just blank. The guy, Randy, didn't even flinch. He just looked at me like I was an annoying stranger interrupting their lunch. I said, "Alyssa, what is this?" She didn't answer. Randy smirked and said, "You must be Jerome." I ignored him. I said, "Alyssa, answer me." She finally spoke, her voice flat and cold. She said, "What do you want me to say, Jerome?" I said, "I want you to tell me who he is." She glanced at Randy, then back at me, and said, "He's my boyfriend." The word hit me like a punch to the gut. I said, "Your boyfriend?" She nodded. I said, "How long?" She shrugged. She actually shrugged. She said, "Does it matter?" I said, "Yes, it matters. We live together. We have a joint account. You told me you loved me." She looked at me with something close to pity and said, "I needed help, Jerome. You were willing to give it. That's all this ever was." Randy laughed, actually laughed. He said, "Dude, you really thought she was into you?" I wanted to hit him. I wanted to scream. But I just stood there, frozen, humiliated, broken. I turned and walked away. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I just walked out of that mall like a ghost. I got in my car and sat there for an hour, staring at nothing, trying to process what had just happened. She was never mine. She was his. I was just the ATM, the retirement plan, the stupid foreigner who believed every word she said. I drove home in a daze. When I got to the condo, I sat on the couch and waited. I don't know what I was waiting for. An apology? An explanation? She didn't come home that night. Or the next. On the third morning, I woke up to the silence. That's when I realized she was gone. That's when I checked my phone and saw the missed calls. That's when I saw the account balance. 0. I called the police. I filed a report. Officer De Leon was polite, professional, but I could see it in his eyes. He thought I was pathetic. He said, "Sir, I understand this is difficult, but legally, she did nothing wrong. It was a joint account. She had every right to withdraw those funds." I said, "But she stole from me." He shook his head. He said, "No, sir. She withdrew money from an account with her name on it. That's not theft. That's access." I said, "So there's nothing you can do?" He said, "I'm sorry, sir. There's no crime here. Just a bad decision." He handed me a card with a victim support hotline number on it and left. I sat there holding that card, feeling like the biggest fool in the world. I called my bank back in the States. They said the same thing. Joint account, legal withdrawal, nothing they could do. I called my brother in Austin. He was furious. He said, "I told you to be careful, Jerome. I told you not to get involved with someone you barely knew, but you didn't listen. You never listen." I said, "I thought she loved me." He said, "She loved your money, Jerome. Wake up." I hung up. I couldn't listen to it anymore. I couldn't listen to anyone tell me what I already knew. I was a fool. A lonely, desperate fool. I didn't leave the condo for 3 days. I just sat there, replaying every conversation, every moment, every red flag I ignored. Cynthia had warned me. My brother had warned me. Hell, my gut had warned me. But I didn't listen. I wanted to believe so badly that I ignored every sign. I wanted to feel loved, needed, important, and she gave me that, for a price. $47,000, plus $12,000 more over the months before that. $59,000. That's what it cost to feel loved. That's what I paid to lie to myself. On the 4th day, Cynthia came by with food. She didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't lecture me. She just sat down next to me and said, "You doing okay?" I shook my head. I said, "No, I'm not." She said, "You will be. It's going to take time, but you will be." I said, "I don't know how, Cynthia." "I gave her everything," she said. "I know." We sat in silence for a while, and then I said it. I said the thing I'd been thinking for days. I said, "I wanted to be loved so badly that I let myself be used." She didn't argue. She just nodded, because it was true. I thought about my ex-wife. I thought about the divorce, the loneliness, the years I spent feeling invisible. I came to the Philippines to heal, to find peace, to start over. But all I did was find a new way to hurt myself. I thought Alyssa would fix me, that love would fix me. But love doesn't fix anything if you're the only one giving it. Alyssa didn't destroy me. I destroyed myself. By refusing to see the truth. By choosing fantasy over reality. By believing that money could buy connection. 2 months later, I'm still in the Philippines. I moved to a smaller studio in Makati. I'm consulting again, slowly rebuilding my savings. I don't date. I don't even look. I joined an expat support group, and I've heard a dozen stories just like mine. Guys who fell in love, gave everything, and woke up with nothing. It doesn't make me feel better. It just makes me realize how common this is. How easy it is to fall for it when you're lonely and desperate and far from home. One night, my friend showed me a dating app. He said, "You should get back out there, man." I wasn't interested, but he kept scrolling, and then he stopped. He said, "Isn't that her?" I looked at the screen. It was Alyssa. New photos, new bio, same smile. It said she was 24, single, looking for someone kind and generous. I stared at that screen for a long time. I thought about messaging her, asking her why, telling her what she did to me, telling her I forgave her, or that I hated her, or that she broke me, but I didn't, because it wouldn't change anything. She got what she wanted. I lost what I had. And somewhere in between, I learned the hardest lesson of my life. Love isn't enough if you're the only one giving it. Trust isn't real if it's built on lies. And no amount of money can fill the space where real connection should be. I closed the app. I'm not ready to try again. Maybe I never will be, but at least now I know the truth. And that's something. It's not much, but it's something.